love Warren. It is the me, Gimping21, and today we are going to be watching a Harman Smith video. Yeah, I know. Boy. So, I've covered Harman Smith before on this channel, but for those of you who are maybe new to my channel and don't know who the heck Harman Smith is a Nintendo Extreme fanboy. And I'm not talking like regular Nintendo Extreme fanboy. I'm talking he is the president of the Crazy Cuckoo Hat fan club of Nintendo Extreme fanboys. So, yeah. In any case, I do think that what we're talking about here today is not the videos that I wanted to talk about the last time that I wanted to talk about Harman Smith, because I had to can both of those videos, because there was just more important things to talk about, and, well, certain videos do have a lifespan, so if I talk about them at specific times, it's like, whatever. So, yeah, plus I also kind of have to clear out a lot of my older stuff anyway, so... yeah, might have gotten deleted and lost in the shuffle of the stuff that I wanted to talk about. Whoops. But hey, that's what you get for New Year's cleaning, and I have a cleaner hard drive. So, excellent. Overall, one of, if not the biggest things that Harman has basically just touted through the past years is that Nintendo is the only thing that is available, and is the only thing that's the best in the business because they sold a lot of consoles, and anyone else who says anything else is literally garbage, and, you know, not worth, I guess, like, anything? Weird. Anyway, we're going to be talking about Baldur's Gate 3 and how apparently it's not being confirmed to, you know, have been selling as well as, Tears of the Kingdom, which, let's get started.
It's pretty easy to tell at this stage that Baldur's Gate 3 is not the best-selling game of 2023. Zelda sold more, Hogwarts Legacy sold more, Call of Duty sold more. I'm sure Starfield sold as much or a little bit more than Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 is not the major juggernaut success that people are making it out to be. And
he says, as the game itself won Game of the Year for the Game Awards. Yeah, I know that I'm going to probably bring that up a few times in this video because, well, it just kind of goes to show you that it did win a lot of awards, and not only that, was super successful, and again, is not technically on the same level as a lot of those other games, because technically speaking, it's a AA game, but even for a AA game, they've basically just broken out into the main AAA space. By the way, I just looked this up in a weird way, and apparently that whole, like, AAA, AA kind of thing, it comes from, like, the conventions of insurance people. I don't know, I looked this up, and I just, like, because I was curious one day, and apparently AAA means, like, some sort of thing. Well, obviously it also means, like, AAA is in the car towing company, but AAA also means, like, some sort of insurance thing, where it was just, like, a super secure, big budget, like, investment thing. I don't know, it's very interesting, and I wanted to just share that factoid with you guys because I just thought it would be funny.
I think a very good example of where Larian is going to go going forward is if we take a look back. If we go back in time and look at another heavily shilled AstroTurf game that won a game award back in the yesteryear of 2014, back when Gamergate was in full swing and people were beginning to realize that gaming journalism was corrupt. You know, that game, Alexa, stop. That game, Dragon Age Inquisition, you know, a game that was universally derided as being a major step down from previous Dragon Quest games, Dragon Age games, that really brought down BioWare and was kind of seen as the beginning of the end of the company. People were already mad at them for Mass Effect 3 and the ending for that game, but Inquisition was the game that really solidified just how far they had fallen since their heyday. And ever since then, what happened? You know, after that game award, Game of the Year 2014, they put out Anthem, they put out Mass Effect Andromeda, and they have completely fallen off the map. They are done. They are not a studio that anybody talks about or cares about anymore. What can we learn from?
I mean, sure, but what a strange example. Let's take this studio, this amazing studio that put out an amazing game of the year, that came out of nowhere to do this whole thing. An amazing indie studio that had a lot of licenses, made a very feature-complete game, and overall, completely and utterly just went out and did it. And then compare it to a game from 10 years ago, made by a completely different studio, under completely different management, and under a completely different amount of, like, budget and constraints and stuff. 'Cause that makes sense, right? That makes all the sense. To compare one studio that made a very successful game to another studio that also made a very successful game series and stuff like that. All because of, I guess, the fact that they both made a third game in a series. What kind of argument is that?
This Baldur's Gate 3 is absolutely in the same position because Baldur's Gate 3 is not a particularly impressive title. It is obvious to me that Baldur's Gate 3 has not left nearly as big of an impact on the gaming scene as Mass Effect has, as Skyrim has, as The Witcher 3 has. Like, it is nowhere near as big or relevant as these franchises that we know are inferior to The Legend of Zelda, right? So, with that in mind, with like...
Of course, it's The Legend of Zelda, because not only was it in the title and stuff like that, but also, yeah. And yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off, but no. Look, Legend of Zelda has had a very massive impact on a lot of things, absolutely. But it also has a much longer legacy. Same thing with the Mass Effect series, it has a pretty long legacy as well. And again, most of that is nostalgia stuff as well. I want to smack him sometimes. I want to smack him. I want to just be like, how are you just such an idiot?
Baldur's Gate 3's, irrelevancy, looming with its lackluster sales. There's no way it sold more than 10 million units. With its with nobody talking about it anymore, with the narrative that it's the most successful game of 2023 crumbling. What's next, right? What's gonna happen next? Right? Well, we're going to see people start to acknowledge that Tears of the Kingdom is a great game, right? This is, I think, a repeat of what happened in...
Ew. First of all, fuck your camera. I hate it. It's constantly, trying to refocus because of the fact that you're moving your hand in such a way that it's just focusing on your hand and stuff. That is annoying. That's so annoying to me. Yeah, that's gonna give me a freaking headache. But the thing is that, we're not acknowledging that, Tears of the Kingdom was a bad game because it wasn't. The people who would say that are the people who either haven't played it or the people who just don't understand what the fuck they're talking about. I agree, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is a great game, but it still had major problems that you are completely disregarding that people had genuine criticism of. Any genuine criticism about any Nintendo first-party game, Harman will literally defend to the ends of the frickin' earth. And it sucks because of the fact that it's just bad. Why? Jesus Christ. Make a coherent statement for once, please.
2017 with Breath of the Wild, right? When that game came out, people did the same thing where they latched on to some random game that came out that year, Horizon Zero Dawn, spent the entire year trying to push it as a major gaming IP. Sony pushed it as their big new thing. It was pushed as a Game of the Year contender. It was supposed to be this big, massive thing. And what happened? It fell off with the sequel and nobody cares about it anymore, right? That was Horizon Zero Dawn. That was its legacy, right? And Breath of the Wild.
Honestly, I kind of agree with that, but it made enough money to make a sequel, so yeah. But also the fact that again, you're comparing one studio heck, one publisher to a different studio, right? Like, how does that make any sense? Because to me, whenever I compare games, I usually compare, whenever I compare even studios and stuff, yeah, certainly comparing their body of work works, but you need to judge each studio based on their own body of work. So, like, what has Larian Studios worked on other than Baldur's Gate? Has they worked on, and some of their other games can usually dictate how it works, unless there's a major shakeup in any sort of, like, management style role. Like, that's usually how this works. So don't look to other companies for one company's proposition and stuff. That's like comparing, say, I don't know, frickin' Pepsi to Mountain Dew or something like that. It makes no sense. Like saying, oh, because Mountain Dew is failing, like, again, hypothetically, because Mountain Dew failed in this regard, then this means that the Pepsi company is basically going to be like, oh, this right here, yeah, that shit's going to fail. Like, it doesn't equate because they have different budgets, different amounts of people working on it, different marketing things, different marketing pushes, and different marketing polls because they have different amounts of brand recognition. It's almost like I went to school for this.
And Breath of the Wild, all throughout that period, going through 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, 2021, 2022, like throughout all of that period, everyone was trying to pretend that game was mid, it wasn't great, it was a Ubisoft open world game, it was garbage, right?
The Horizon Zero Dawn? Are we still talking about the same thing here? Because it wasn't Ubisoft that made that game. It was Sony. Or, well, the company that's like the developers understood. Sony published the game. And people were getting sick of like the third-person action RPG that Sony had. So.
And then Tears of the Kingdom came out, right? In order to give themselves credibility, in order to pretend that they, were big fans of Zelda and that they were extremely disappointed with what happened with Tears of the Kingdom, the same people who spent the past 7 years, 7 years, hating on Breath of the Wild turned around and said Breath of the Wild was a masterpiece and that Tears of the Kingdom was
Who the fuck says this? Source, please.
a disappointment, right? This is why criticisms of major Nintendo games do not stick, because these people they have to go back and praise older Nintendo games in order to give themselves credibility. Because if you're the sort of person who doesn't like the older games, you're not the sort of person who can criticize these newer games effectively, right? Because you're just seen as a pleb and as a hater and as just a pretender, right? You are a poser. You don't have the credentials to adequately play these games, right? To give critiques on them. Like, if you don't understand Breath of the Wild, if you don't understand its appeal.
I mean, I can ask the exact same question as to why you dick ride and suck off Nintendo all the time, and yet call everyone else garbage when you see the amount of success that every other game seems to have. Not saying that Nintendo doesn't have success, because they definitely do, but you see the success of one game that's not a Nintendo game, and you have to say it's garbage because of the fact that Nintendo, in your mind, it can do no wrong and is God. And yet you wonder why people make fun of you.
Like, then why would I ever take your opinion seriously, right? And that has been the narrative going into Tears of the Kingdom, is that like all these Breath of the Wild fans, all these hardcore fans who love Breath of the Wild are now upset with Tears of the Kingdom, right? For being the exact same game. Well, if you were fans of Breath of the Wild, wouldn't you want more of the same, right? When Majora's Mask came out, weren't you upset that Majora's Mask wasn't the exact same game? Right? Weren't you upset with Wind Waker being too different? Weren't you upset with Twilight Princess being too similar? Like, it's almost like you're upset no matter what happens, right? It's almost like you make up some kind of controversy no matter what the situation is, no matter what the quality of the product is, no matter what Nintendo does, you're always going to complain about it. It's almost like we can't take your opinion seriously.
I mean, I think criticizing and giving legitimate criticism about anything, even regardless of your knowledge on the stuff, can be helpful. I mean, if you have no fucking knowledge at all and completely just disregard anyone else's opinion on a matter, even though you yourself seem to have a very limited opinion on that, in such a regard that you can tell that this is being pointed at Harman specifically because I'm being sarcastic, but the thing with Breath of the Wild versus Tears of the Kingdom is the reason why people got upset about it, more or less, from what I understand, is that it was more of the same. And yeah, absolutely, the people who liked Breath of the Wild are like, oh wow, this is so different and was really cool. But at the same time, they realized that Tears of the Kingdom was more of the same, and they used the same map, and they didn't really innovate too much on the actual product. There was definitely some new gameplay gimmicks and stuff that actually really worked well with the game, and again, absolutely was very entertaining to watch. But it, to most people, or to a lot of people before they played it, it looked like the same, and that was a big critique of it. Not only that big critique, but it was also the fact that it was still running on Switch hardware. You get why people were a little bit upset about that, right? Because the Switch hardware, it doesn't actually, isn't the best in terms of the gaming hardware that you can buy. I mean, yeah, certainly it's okay and it's serviceable for what it is, but imagine if, say, Tears of the Kingdom came out on, like, a more powerful Switch, right? Like a Switch 2 that was, like, 4 times as powerful as the Nintendo Switch 1. Like, imagine that. Imagine the stuff that they could do with that hardware. All right? It felt like there was a lot of potential there, and there was definitely a lot of potential there, but it's just not being utilized as much. It's legit criticism. So,
Seriously, because you're not being fair to the actual product. And that's what this comes down to, is that people were not being fair to Tears of the Kingdom. They were deliberately misinterpreting this game. They were deliberately downplaying it. They were deliberately like ignoring all of its major qualities. They were ignoring everything the game delivered on, what it improved on, what it did better than Breath of the Wild. They were ignoring facts like say Nintendo managed to put out a sequel to Breath of the Wild before CD Projekt Red could put out a sequel to Witcher 3, right? Before Bethesda could put out a real sequel to Skyrim, right?
no, I don't think that that's even equatable at all. Because here's the thing, right? The reason why The Witcher 4 took a back seat is because of the fact that CD Projekt Red was working on Cyberpunk for forever. And they don't have a quick turnaround because they tend to make a lot of their stuff, and they're a much smaller studio than Nintendo is. Full stop. For Bethesda, they were working on other games as well, and again, they are a pretty small studio in comparison to Nintendo. You have to understand that, yes, absolutely, the sequel to Skyrim being in the Elder Scrolls series was taking a long time because, well, they just had a lot of shit that they were doing, and they were just re-releasing Skyrim a lot, and they were releasing other fucking games. Because not every studio can work on, like, quick turnaround games such as, say, Call of Duty, but you can have, like, 5 Call of Duties out by the time Nintendo puts out a new game, but you're not going to mention that. It's the quality that Nintendo actually usually tries to strive for, rather than the quantity of games that other studios tend to, like, try to boast about, or at least some other studios try to boast about. You get the difference here, right, Harman? Right?
The fact that they had such a quick turnaround time on a game like this is just absolutely insane, and people don't give them enough credit for it. And above all, I think they're going to do it again. Like that's the thing here is that people really have this mindset right now is that Tears of the Kingdom was so disappointing that the sales are going to go down with the next game, but it's not going to happen. The next game is going to have like a new setting. It's going to be completely original. It's going to be way more innovative. It's going to be a completely new experience. And with that in mind, your core criticism of Tears of the Kingdom, that it was simply a rehash of Breath of the Wild, just simply disappears. And what's going to happen is that a lot of the people attacking Tears right now are going to flip and say it was a masterpiece. The best game released that year. Like, we're already kind of seeing this in 2024. Now that, like, the industry thinks that, like, Tears of the Kingdom has been successfully downplayed, they kind of have to move on from it. I think right now they're kind of pushing the Switch 2 thing. But, like, in a vacuum, right, without people actively pushing a narrative, Tears of the Kingdom would be and is going to be rightfully acknowledged as a masterpiece, right? It is a genuinely great game, and nothing that any game journalist, YouTuber, or shill can do will change that.
I mean, most people will say that, yeah, absolutely, there is good aspects to the game. And I don't think anyone's dissuading the fact that it did have a large impact, or a larger in-life impact than you might say. But again, most of that impact was felt with Breath of the Wild. Because, again, you mentioned it in your argument that Tears of the Kingdom is best, because it was more of the same. See, the thing that Harman can't do, and the thing that a lot of apparently fanboys can't do, is the fact that they don't put a lot of things into the context of which happens. Their hindsight is usually what they use in order to say, hey, this success is something that I called a while back. Yeah, it's like making a very assured bet on, like, a good stock that you had super insider info or something like that. That's, at least that's how they treat it a lot of times. But here's one of, if not the biggest problem with them. A broken clock can be right twice a day is a great saying for this. That's meaning that a person that spouts enough garbage, pretty much, can basically have a right opinion in the right contexts. You know? It's the same thing of, like, even a monkey can eventually create Shakespeare, right? Because of the fact that that sort of thing, like, exists, it's a smaller exceptional rule than that. Although most fanboys would say, oh no, it's not an exception because I actually have a lot of this industry knowledge because I played a lot of video games and stuff. That's more of a false authority, appeal to false authority, that makes sense. Just because, like, people have, like, a platform to talk on and have, like, an actual audience that follows them means that they are an authority on this thing. I don't see myself as an authority on a lot of things. The only things that I find myself an authority on is, like, more business decisions, but that's because I got a degree and went into, like, actual college to actually do that, so I always make sure to bring that up. So I actually have a little bit of authority on that, and I have a bit more authority than most of the other fanboys here. But I don't think people are not acknowledging that Tears of the Kingdom was good. They just have some major criticisms of it, and in my mind, and in most people's minds, when you have a good critique of a game, that's just, it just makes the whole world better, just to critique something. That's why I do make these videos. It's a critique of society, I guess. Anyway, I think that'll about do it for this video. It's a pretty simple one this week. I didn't expect it to be this long. I might just edit out specific parts and shorten this video down a bit. But if it doesn't and you end up hearing this entire last bit of rant, whatever. I'm just really tired and also a little bit sick. So next week I will probably have my clip show out on probably Tuesday. Because quite honestly, I don't know if I want to make another video next week. But if I do, I will shift it around and make an intro and stuff. I'm also now releasing more new music. That's right, first new album of the year. It's more of a mixtape, but whatever. First new mixtape of the year, that being Visions Beyond. That's my new mixtape that's coming out. I think it's mixtape 4 or something like that I'm going to call it. But Visions Beyond, it's more of a lo-fi type of beat that I was working on, and again, I usually sit on about an album-ish of music every time, so yeah, I am still making music to anyone who really wants to know. I will have the full video probably next week when I edit it together, because I already have all of the album art and things like that. You probably saw it in my community post. If you didn't, I have a community post on that, so go and check that out. In any case, I think that'll about do it for this video. Enough shilling. If you like what it is that I do and want to support me in any way, shape, or form, again, there's always the Patreon, other stuff like that down in the description. I'm trying to look to hit 1K subscribers this week, or this year, so please feel free to comment and subscribe and stuff. Get me through that algorithm so I can make it to 1K by the end of this year. Please and thank you, and I love you all. My name is GamePenguin21, Harman, no, and a peace off.